Hi, and welcome back to the TM podcast. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the abduction of Heather Teague. If you've seen my Facebook post, you know that this episode was a little bit delayed, but for good reason. I reached out to a website dedicated to finding Heather for some more information. There really wasn't much to go off of online as far as details go, so I'd hoped to get just a little more insight before I recorded. Almost immediately, I got a direct message from Heather's mother, Sarah. She said she wanted to give me a call and discuss her daughter's case. I was blown away that I got a response at all, much less one from her mother. Not many people get the opportunity to speak to the people involved in these cases, so the unfortunate result of that is usually misinformation being spread. I'm very happy to have had a conversation with Sarah and very happy to be able to bring you insight and information that I have yet to find on my own in researching online. Before our phone call, I thought this was an open and shut situation. I had hope for sure, but I had a pretty strong opinion based on the information that was available. I assumed that talking to Sarah would just be to back up the thoughts that I already had. I was very, very wrong. If I would have just posted the information that I had, I would be no different than the podcasts and YouTube videos that have already posted all the information that I already see that is wrong. So I'll go over what I thought to be the truth, and I'll let Sarah tell you herself about what has really happened in the last 20 plus years in her daughter's case. So, Heather Teague was abducted and is still missing as of today. At the time of her disappearance, she was 23 years old with long brown hair and green eyes. She was 5'2" and around 100 pounds. Now, if you do any searching online, here is the story that you'll find. Keep in mind that Sarah will let you know what the truth is after this, as what is reported is not the real story. On August 26, 1995, while home for summer break from college, Heather went to Newburgh Beach in Henderson County, Kentucky. She had planned to lay out for the day and unwind. It isn't known how long she was laying out before she was taken, but on that afternoon, around 1 p.m., as she was laying in her chair, someone came from the woods behind her and drug her away, and she was never seen or heard from again. An eyewitness told police that he was watching the beach through a telescope with his wife and actually saw it happen. He said that a white male walked up to her, grabbed her by her hair, and pulled her into the woods. He said that the man had a gun and looked to be around 6 foot tall and 200 to 230 pounds. Oddly enough, he said the man was wearing blue jeans, no shirt, and a wig and mosquito net. He could barely see his face, but he appeared to have brown hair and a beard. This bit of information seemed very helpful, but was really shady or pure coincidence. To be looking around on the beach with a telescope isn't that weird, I guess, if there are events going on, but to be looking at her right as she's abducted from the other side of the river would be enough for me to never look through a telescope again. So they say that police arrived as soon as they could and searched the entire area, but didn't find Heather anywhere. They did find her bathing suit and some items that she had with her, but nothing that helped lead them to where she would be. It's obvious here that it was something serious, regardless of what you think the outcome is. For all of her items to be left behind, including her clothes, whoever took her had something terrible planned. In their initial investigation, police also discovered that a local farmer had actually been filming one of his fields nearby, trying to catch someone that had been vandalizing it. In the footage, Heather's car is seen, as well as a red Ford Bronco. A witness had stated that the Bronco parked near Heather's car at the beach. There wasn't any way of knowing if the Bronco had anything to do with the disappearance, but it was all they had to go on at the time. After the announcement of her disappearance, a man named Marvin Ray Dill was pulled over by local police for a regular traffic stop. Marvin drove a red and white Ford Bronco. Inside his vehicle, the officer found 2 guns, 2 knives, duct tape, gloves, rope, some brown hair, and a few bloodstains inside the tailgate. Marvin also resembled the sketch police had drawn from the telescope man's description. For whatever reason, by most accounts, he was not arrested at the traffic stop and continued on. Around this time, investigators were receiving tips from members of the community saying he was connected to Heather and her disappearance. So with all these tips and information from the traffic stop, police decided to go to his house and question him in the hopes of getting answers in the case. As soon as Marvin found out the police were coming to question him, he killed himself. He shot himself in the head before police could ever talk to him. Not being able to talk to him allegedly did not stop the police in gathering information on him, and they eventually had enough to, quote, build a case and take it to the grand jury. They believed that he, at the very least, was a major player in the abduction, They took it to trial and called his wife to the stand for questioning, but she used her Fifth Amendment right and did not answer any questions. If he was involved in the crime, any chance of that information coming out died with him, and if his wife knew anything, it's obvious she's not willing to talk about it. According to most sources, there were some other suspects the police looked into as well over the years, but as of today, no one has ever been charged. One of the most important suspects that you'll see online is a man named Christopher Below. He's currently in prison for being responsible for the death of a woman named Catherine Fetzer in 1991. Her body was never found, but Christopher confessed and pled guilty in that case to an involuntary manslaughter charge. He's also suspected in the murder of several other females in the area, but has not been formally charged in anything other than Catherine's case. An interesting fact about the other women, and Heather, is that they all look similar. All of them, to include Heather and Catherine, were small white women with long dark hair. Something else to note is that Christopher left Kentucky the day that Marvin committed suicide, and it was alleged that they were acquaintances, but unfortunately, no other notable evidence was discovered, and he could not be charged. So that's the story that's written everywhere, and the story that led me to form the opinion that Mr. Deal was the man to blame. With that information, who wouldn't come to that conclusion? It was open and shut to me, and that was until Sarah called me and flipped this case upside down. The story that she tells is one of lies and deception on the highest level of the Kentucky State Police. The story she tells is one that will have you questioning everything that you've ever heard about this case, especially what I just told you. The story that she's telling is the truth. Hey, is this Sarah?
It is.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Well, I'm Travis with the TM podcast, and like we talked about earlier, I was going to call and get some information from you.
I really appreciate you doing this. Like I was telling you, there's been several people that have done podcasts and YouTube videos, and they just get, I guess they get bits and pieces from, the internet or whatever. I don't know, but it feels so disrespectful to me.
Right.
And so I appreciate you doing this.
Well, yes, ma'am. And usually when I do my research, I'll go through as many sources as I can find and only really include the information that lines up. A lot of times people add unnecessary things to kind of sensationalize their articles just for follows and likes and stuff like that. So it's really cool that you're going to let me get this information straight from you, and I hope that it'll dispel any rumors or any things that aren't correct that are out there.
Well, I hope so too, Travis. Anybody that reads or hears about Heather's story, if you dig very deep into it or have followed it through the years, you can tell that it actually sounds like a made-up story.
Right.
And that's without everything that I know. That there's from the very beginning, of course, like it's been a process. I can look back now, and I know things now that it really does sound like a made-up story. From the very beginning, it was the Henderson Police Department that called us on August the 26th of 95, and it was about, 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were just in a panic. They were like, "Do you know where Heather is?" And we're like, "No." And well, hang on a minute, we'll get back with you. And they called back, and they were just, like I say, in a state of panic. And then finally, they told us that Heather had left her car abandoned on Newburgh Beach. So my daughter Holly and I drove straight there. And now we know that by, 12:30 or even, close to 1 o'clock, she was gone. So by the time they called us, they knew that she had not left her car abandoned on Newburgh Beach, that when we pulled up, there were policemen everywhere, yellow tapes, and of course by then the Kentucky State Police had the case, and I didn't realize for years, actually until the last probably 4 or 5 years, how significant that was. Heather had met with a Henderson police officer the night before she was abducted. He became FBI the next year, and like I say, now we know the sketch wasn't done until day 4, and that was after the film of the Bronco was turned in, and this guy named Marty Dill became a suspect, and his 94 driver's license was drawn as as his appearance the day he died, and it wasn't. He was totally bald. To this day, almost 24 years later, I have jail records. I have sworn affidavits from Marty Dill's family, his friends. I mean, and he was bald. There had been actually a loss outbreak in Webster County Jail where he was, and he wasn't the only one that was shaved bald. But his beard, he had no hair.
Wow.
His wife went to the jail with a friend and with actually his sister-in-law at the time, and she said she was absolutely shocked because that's the first time she had ever seen him without his long bushy hair and beard.
And that's crazy too. I actually never found that out in any of my research. I had kind of gathered my information, and I usually have my own opinion of every case that I have. I'm no real detective or police officer, but I like to make some type of conclusion or opinion at the end of my episodes on what I really think happened. And just
Right.
based on some of the information that I had, without knowing that at all, I would have assumed that that guy was definitely involved, or either the one that did it or at least helped. But that changes pretty much everything that I thought.
That's exactly what we were supposed to think, because it took me 8 years before I got the autopsy report, and he was actually sitting in the bathroom floor. He was shot at an angle. There was no gunpowder residue test done by the state police, and I mean there was no stippling. He didn't shoot him. We think there's a chance that somebody came from the back door and shot him, or his uncle shot him. He was not. The trailer was surrounded. He never once did anybody ask, do you know where Heather is? The general consensus was that he was going to kill himself. Well, his dad was allowed to go in the trailer and bring him Elavil and Prozac, which I guess was his regular medication, but it would have made him sleepy. So he was sitting in the bathroom floor, and the gun went off. There was, with FBI there, and we learned later that the eyewitness was there. This whole investigation hinges on the eyewitness. He was not only actively involved, there's so much about this eyewitness. Did your gut tell you that there was something not right about him?
Yeah, because I guess it's not that weird to be, watching a beach, or if you've got a new telescope or whatever, but it's really strange for someone to have just so happened to see that happen right when it happened, and looking at the entire beach area. How would you know to look there? And then I was reading in one of the articles I read that there was a long period of time between when he actually saw it and when he called it in. Is that true?
Well, see, this is the thing. He claims he called 911. He didn't. Even on the August 30th issue of a newspaper, it was already disputed less than a week after the abduction that the eyewitness claims he called 911, but the sheriff said there's no record of any such call. Okay, we learned right after this happened, of course, he took a boat across the river, and he and the lieutenant, Kentucky State Police lieutenant, found Heather's bathing suit bottoms. So immediately he was right involved. There's an article that came out that the state police told him and his family to get out of town. So he went to Texas. He took his family and went out of town. But bottom line is, he never did call 911. Yeah. So in 2007, attorney had filed, we just kept wanting to hear the 911 call. Which, like I say, we know now there was no official 911 call. And I was told, well, it had been recorded over. I was told all kind of things. So finally, in 2007, we were told that the call he made, we decided we would just settle for the time and location of the call. We were given by the Kentucky State Police, Indiana State Police at 1:15. That was what they told us when this witness had made the call. Okay, in 2008, my daughter Holly and I and our attorney went in, and the Kentucky State Police, 4 officers played supposedly the 911 call, and it was only Mr. Wathall, Tim Wathall's voice, saying, "Oh, he either wore dark bushy hair, he either had dark bushy hair and a beard, or he wore a mosquito netting." Well, see, in the very beginning, that's what we were told, is that the man that took Heather had dark bushy hair and a beard. Then I learned at 6 weeks that this Marty Deal was clean shaven. So, other than it took 4 days to do the sketch, and the sketch turned out identical to Marty Deal's 94 driver's license, now in 2008, we only hear Mr. Wathall's voice describing a wig and a mosquito netting that was never a part of anything except to blame Marty Deal, because we were told by the Kentucky State Police that he had been a suspect in a rape that had happened in 94. And the guy that did the rape wore a mosquito netting. Well, I talked to the lady that had been raped in a cemetery. Anyway, then I finally got the DNA results from Marty Deal's attorney. Marty never was a suspect. If he had been a suspect in 94, why wasn't he arrested? Right. But see, the mosquito netting came into play, and so the state police put that on there, that was a part of the reason you couldn't see all his dark bushy, was he wore a mosquito netting and a wig. So, like I said, in 2008, we heard that call, and we knew it was just made up. So in 2016, which you've probably done research recently on our win against the Kentucky State Police.
Yes.
After this call, this sergeant allowed us to hear a call. And in this call, he says, I just talked to Indiana State Police, which we know that was at 1:15. Now, if the abduction happened even at 12:30, here he's already waited till 1:15 to call the Indiana State Police. And then he says, I waited 25 minutes to call, because I thought it was a boyfriend playing a joke. And, pardon me?
I was saying what? Because boyfriend playing a joke with a gun and pulling somebody by their hair?
Right.
That seems really shady.
Well, the thing that absolutely crushed me was when I heard this call. Now you got to remember, Travis, this is 20 years later at that time.
Right.
What he described happened on that call was absolutely 100% different than what he had told our family and the public for 20 years.
Wow.
The story we heard was that he and his wife were eating lunch. They looked through the telescope, and his wife had seen a man standing at the edge of the tree. Okay, the story had always been that the man crouched down real slowly. He came to Heather. He whispered something to her as he put his hand flat on her back. And as he was whispering to her, he wrapped her hair around his wrist and jerked her up with something silver shining. And she dropped her towel there in the sand. Okay, that's what we've been told.
Right.
I heard his voice say, this man charged down from the woods. He yanked her up by the hair of the head, and she took her towel to the woods. Every little detail was different. Right. Every little detail.
That's really important, too, because if it's going to be a joke or something, maybe the sneaking around and putting your hand on the back, maybe that's a joke without the gun being an element, but running out there and grabbing her, that's completely different. And with the story being completely different, that just makes it even more suspicious to me.
Well, and the fact that the Kentucky State Police have protected this man. I mean, they knew what his story had been. They knew what they knew what was on the call, but why would they give us the call when we asked, when did he call 911? why would they give us Indiana State Police at 1:15? They didn't even mention the call to Kentucky State Police. That wasn't even in the equation, although that's what we thought we were asking for.
Right.
And then in 2005, of course, the FBI comes in and tells me that they have found evidence that they had given to the Kentucky State Police when they processed the Bronco, and it had been sitting there for 10 years. So at that time, their suggestion was they wanted me to make Heather's case go federal. They were going to, of course, get the evidence analyzed, and then they wanted me to sue the state police. This is before I even had an attorney. So they stayed with us for about 2.5 years. And then finally, I had to declare Heather legally deceased just to get the FBI files. That was just the process because they saw that there was not going to be a lawsuit filed. So when I got the files back, and you've probably seen these on Heather's page, it talks about drugs, prostitution, public corruption, and a strip club strongly linked to Heather's abduction.
Yeah, I saw that on the website.
And the thing that keeps hitting me is, I keep reading these files and they're redacted. But bottom line is the FBI and the state police, they know what's been redacted. And the other strange thing is, as soon as I got these files, I called the FBI, which they were already taken off the case at that point. But I called them and I said, can you please explain? I picked out, I think, 6 files. I said, could you please explain these files to me? And Agent Mike Brown at Owensboro FBI, he said, Miss Teague, it will do you no good to come here. You need to send those files to the Office of the Inspector General in Washington. So I did. Okay, they went round and round. They went from the Office of the Inspector General, Department of Justice. They went to the investigations, FBI investigations, FBI inspections, and then finally an agent, Mike McDonald, in Washington, he said, Ms. Teague, these have to go to the Department of Public Corruption, Criminal Investigation Department. So that's where her files are right now. And I can't get anybody to give me an answer. The FBI says the state police's files, their FBI files, are not redacted. The state police remain adamant that their files are just like mine and that they are redacted. So, I don't know. I just know that what we were told happened that day is not what happened. I don't know where that leaves Heather.
Right, and in looking at those files, I could barely even read them because of how many names were redacted. Do you think that they're redacted on the state level and the state is trying to protect someone that's in those files?
Oh, that's a big possibility. Of course, what we know now, that Heather did meet with a Henderson police officer the night before, and the other officer that was there at that time was Robert Schultz. Well, Robert Schultz became captain at Post 16 for a while. Then he went to Frankfurt, and then when all this other stuff started happening with Heather, he came back to state police. He sent me a certified letter telling me that I could have no more contact with him because I had accused him specifically in the state police for obstruction of justice. Now he's retired. The sergeant that let us hear this call that had been hidden and kept secret to protect Tim Walthall for 20 years, he was immediately taken off the case. He was put on road duty, which he was sergeant over all detectives at Post 16 Henderson. He was taken off the case, put on road duty, and then finally he took an early retirement because he made a stand for Heather. He let us hear this call. He let us hear a call that the state police had kept hidden for 20 years to protect Tim Walthall.
Wow.
We need to find out who he is, which agency he worked for, because I believe firmly he's with some kind of police agency. why would the state police ask him to take his family and leave town? You know, I mean, there's so many things that wraps around his involvement.
Yeah, specifically with him, another thing that confuses me is, okay, I get that he goes across with the police to kind of point out where he saw everything, but I don't understand why he would be present when they went to the guy's house. That doesn't make sense to me.
He shouldn't have been, but let me tell you this. I thought he was just a hero. Every time I called Post 16, or every time I showed up at Post 16, he was there. I thought he was the greatest. I mean, you know, he was just there. It dawned on me later that the state police had to have been calling him to let him know I was there. He was president. He and his twin brother were president and vice president of an aluminum factory in Petersburg, Indiana, and also businesses in South America. So right before the year anniversary, he was sitting there. The police called me in to say I didn't have an attorney. It was just me. And they were wanting me to sue Tracy Deal, Marty's widow.
Right.
And the eyewitness is sitting there with an attorney named Eddie Jones. Well, it didn't dawn on me that, you know, why did he need an attorney anyway? But in 2002, Eddie Jones, Mike Herron, Paul Lloyd, an owner of a local strip club here, they were all busted for huge amounts of drugs. So here the eyewitness is sitting there with the attorney that eventually gets busted for all these drugs.
Wow.
So, yeah, we're waiting right now, Travis, for the judge to decide if we can subpoena Tim Waffle because he lives in Indiana. We want to subpoena the 4 officers that were in the room when the 2008 call was heard, because today we heard the 2016 call. See, the sergeant called us and he said, Miss Teague, there's nothing in this call about a wig and mosquito netting. And he told us to come up there right now so we could listen to it. Well, he got on the phone to Detective Wise, and he said, I have the page here, the evidence number, the date and time that Miss Teague and her attorney and her daughter came in and heard the 2008 call. Find it. It's gone. It is gone. More evidence that is gone. And this sergeant let us know that there was a shoe prints that he had just found that still had not been sent off. This was 20 years later.
Wow.
So,
So
right now that they're still protecting Tim Waffle for some reason.
that, without knowing that entire element of it, that turns everything I had already kind of written down upside down, obviously, because like you said, I thought this guy's a hero. He just happens to be at the right place, right time to see enough to help out the case, but that's completely different. And from what I read and what I see all over the internet, the story that everyone wants to be told, and by everyone I mean the police and whoever the news interviews, is that she goes out to sunbathe. This guy sees this happening. Coincidentally, a farmer has some film of his Bronco parking beside or near her car. So that's really gives them all the information that they need to kind of link this guy that they want. And then he gets pulled over and has all this random stuff in his car that kind of links him to doing something bad. And then he kills himself. And which, if I didn't know anything that you told me at all, I would just think, like I said, hey, this guy probably did it. I mean, he killed himself. But you're saying, there was no gunshot residue test on his hands. It was a really shady scenario.
He was bald. I mean, why wouldn't the FBI, why was the eyewitness there, like you said, to start with? He had no business being at the trailer that night. And see, he told me that he went to the morgue and positively identified Marty as being the one that took Heather. He said, he chopped that long hair off with scissors, and he said the back of his head was blown away. And I'm saying, how horrible that you had to see that sight. Well, come to find out, Marty was bald, and I talked to his mother. There was not even an exit wound. There was a small bullet hole in his right temple that required only a Band-Aid like of a thing. And then when I got the autopsy report, There wasn't even an exit one. And here he tells me that he saw the whole back of his head blown off. So his whole story is, and one thing that really, I was going through my notes and I had a little yellow piece of paper that I had written on July the 27th of 97. And I had written to my daughter Holly that I was standing next to Tim Walthall, the eyewitness, and he laughed about these people that he had working for him in South America. He said they would fall off of these handmade elevators, and he joked how cheaply they worked and how easily they could be replaced.
Wow,
I literally got sick that day.
So right there, it just tells you he doesn't value people. He's probably a bad character to begin with. If even in just regular conversation with a person that you need to be very respectful around. I mean, the mother of someone who lost their child and is still missing,
Yeah.
and you're joking about the quality of your workers overseas. It seems kind of strange.
It was, and that's something I guess I had, forgotten until I had read the little note I had written to Holly about that event. And right now he's a millionaire. He's retired from 4-star, and now he's got 3 or 4 high-priced attorneys fighting for us to not question him. And of course, the state police have hired 2 more attorneys to stop the subpoenas of the officers that heard that 2008 call.
And that in itself seems really suspicious to me. I feel like if I was trying to help you out and I was just only a witness that saw something terrible, I would do everything in my power to, I would be there anytime you needed to ask me questions, and I would try to be as thorough as possible, not run away and hide behind attorneys.
That's true, but see now the state police and he knows, Tim Walthall knows that we've heard the actual call that he made to Kentucky State Police, and we know now that his whole story, every single detail, is not true. So that's why the sergeant got pretty much told to retire, pretty much, and that's why now we're being fought tooth and nail. Except Judge Shepard in Frankfurt, he knows. He knows that something's not right. We just won a little settlement, an open records, where they had denied me open records, and we finally won. They appealed it, of course, to the Court of Appeals, and we won. And so that's where we are now. I mean, we know that whole day, the whole story has not been told. And for this eyewitness to be protected by the state police all these years, was she sold? That's one of the things that we've been told is she was sold. And if she was a confidential informant, which it appears that she may have been, since she met with that Henderson police officer the night before. His boss told me it was the night before. And then when push came to shove, the FBI brought him, he was already FBI head of pornography division, on February the 19th of 2008. They came here. Of course, the FBI was already off the case, but this FBI man brought him to my house, and he knew I'd be recording it. I mean, I was notorious at that time for recording everything. I mean, it wasn't anything we discussed, but anyway, Mr. James Hendricks is the officer's name. He said, I said, why are you here? He said, I came to clear up a rumor. He said, I saw your daughter 3 weeks before she was abducted. So he lied about that, and the FBI guy that brought him knew what he was going to say, because he prompted me to find out about that night. He when I told him I had heard that Heather met with James Hendricks the night before, he said, Miss Teague, there will be a report filed. So I called HPD. John Neville said, Miss Teague, James Hendricks did see Heather the night before. We wish we could have arrested her for something, but he she was asleep out on the park on a boat ramp, and James just asked her to leave. Well, I told the FBI guy that, and he said no. He said there would have been a report filed. So I went back to John Neville's and I said, are you sure there wasn't a report filed? No, ma'am, we didn't file a report. So the next thing I know, Jerry Garner, the FBI man that had come in 2005 to tell me they were going to try to get Heather's case to go federal and all that, he brings Hendricks to my home. And just because there should have been a report filed, and because Jerry Garner was trying to tell me something, you know, and now James Hendricks is in Washington, D.C., I think, head of pornography.
Wow.
So if the FBI files we have are true, it says drugs, prostitution, public corruption, and a strip club are strongly linked to Heather's abduction. So I guess, you know, that would be more important than Heather's life, to hide any and all information about drugs and prostitution. That seems to be what they've hidden for maybe 24 years, August the 26th. And the state police to this day will not admit that Marty Dill was involved.
And that's very, very, very important fact, because his involvement at all also, I believe, linked the other person, Christopher Below. Was his only involvement linked to the Marty guy, or is there something else with that?
Well, that's very, very interesting. I wish you could see this sketch. The composite sketch is actually Marty Dill's 94 driver's license on Chris Below's body. I don't know. I send Christopher Below. It's been a few years since I've sent him anything, but I've spoken with his caseworker and tried to get her to, you know, watch him when he opens the mail and if there's any reaction about Heather. And but other than that, he was there, and he and Marty were in the first grade together. He did have the bushy hair and the beard. I believe he was the one that raped the girl in 94, that when he did wear a wig and a mosquito netting. I believe he could be involved. But what we know for sure is that in 1998, the brother-in-law, Mike Shelton, he's dead now, he went to a home in Henderson. He didn't know this girl was changing her baby's diaper in the back bedroom. And Mike Shelton was Marty Dill's brother-in-law. He went in this house, and there were 3 other guys sitting there, and he said Heather was accidentally ran over when she jumped out of the vehicle. Okay, the girl in the back bedroom, she got in touch with me. We got in touch with the state police. An unmarked car met us. She got out of my car, got into their car. They recorded the conversation. 2 months later, she calls me and she says, the state police have told me that if I want to go any further with this, that my baby's daddy is a known drug dealer and my baby and my life could be in danger. So from what I can gather now, I believe Mike Shelton was involved. I believe that if Heather was accidentally ran over, he was known to have borrowed the Bronco many, many times. I think he may have gone to get Marty after the fact, to get Marty to help dispose of Heather if indeed she was ran over. And that would have been how Marty could have been involved. The sad thing is Marty knew that this whole thing was being pinned on him. He knew his brother-in-law had already signed a statement about the Bronco being hidden in his yard. It's in the investigative report. Marty knew that whatever happened that day, he was being blamed for all of it. So either, I had always thought that, of course, the first 6 weeks we thought he had killed himself, but now, we know for sure he didn't kill himself. And with the eyewitness having been at the trailer, of course, like I said, the whole trailer was surrounded, and he was sitting at the back door in the bathroom floor. If if Ernie Green, his uncle, didn't shoot him, you know, who's to say eyewitness didn't go in there and shoot him? I don't know. But anyway,
so many questions that comes up with that they're all hinged upon one eyewitness that has obviously already lied. So it's so hard to even begin to wrap your head around the whole thing when the whole thing's propped up on one thing that isn't true. And do you think that, since what you just told me, do you think the widow of the guy that was killed in his home, that they said committed suicide, do you think that she knows a lot and that's why she's pleading the fifth every time that you guys bring her up?
Well, she's only been questioned the one time on November the 7th of 95. That's the only time she was ever questioned.
Okay.
But was sure. You know, and I've got letters here that I had written in 96, 97, 98 to the governor, just begging to grant her complete immunity, to just tell what she knew. And, you know, little by little, it's been a process. Like I say, she definitely knew Marty was bald. She definitely knew that Mike Shelton, she probably knows exactly where Heather is. But the state police haven't tried to question her since November the 7th of 95. 6 weeks after Heather was taken is the last time she was ever questioned.
Wow. And that kind of says a lot, too. If the one person who seems like they should be questioned to death almost, they're not even trying, because they know that if there is some type of corruption going on, she would be the one that would have that answer.
Well, they didn't try to even talk to Mike Shelton either. He was involved in a really bad wreck where two people were killed because he was under the influence. So he was in jail for manslaughter. And I spoke with his attorney and just begged her, you know, because he was already crippled at that time. He was a mess. And I said, I don't care if he does another day in jail, you know, just tell me why he said Heather was run over. Where is she? And he wouldn't talk. And then he finally died at his home about 3 years ago, but the state police never questioned him. They never.
Wow.
You know, his name is in the search warrant as calling in to say that, you know, Marty had hidden the Bronco, and it wasn't hidden. It was just behind their trailer. But
wow.
It just sounds like a made-up story, and when you've got rich, powerful people that are in charge, you know, it's definitely been a process. But this judge, he knows that something's not right, and of course, my faith is so strong that, you know, I have that scripture verse, Matthew 10:26, written on every ribbon that I hang, and God's revealed a lot. He's revealed. I mean, it took 20 years before we heard Mr. Walthall's voice on that call, and had this sergeant. I said, God has a sense of humor, Travis, because this sergeant's name is Pagan.
Oh, wow.
And he's Sergeant Pagan. Yeah, he's the one that allowed us to hear the call. And had he not listened to that day and called us in, it was just us. You know, before in 2008, the whole room was full of cops. And my daughter Holly just laughed out loud because it wasn't even a call. All we heard was Tim Walthall's voice. You know, and they were trying to I believe firmly that he actually made up that call for us to hear so we would stop. You know, it's like every step of the way, it's like, you know, Marty killed himself. He took his secrets to his grave. Stop looking for Heather. Take her pictures down. At 2 months, this lieutenant told me, take her missing posters down. Marty Dill took her. He killed her. He killed himself and took his secrets to his grave.
Well, that is really intense. And that, you say that the story sounds made up, but I mean, with everything that you've given me, there's a lot more information that's out there. I feel like with the little bit of information that they try to put out there, I think that that's what they want. They want people to make that conclusion like I did, just like I did when I was writing up this podcast episode. I made that conclusion as well. Well, it seems like he did this and he killed himself and that's it. But given all the real information that it's for some reason so hard to find, it really sounds like the story that you're telling me is what really happened.
Well, it shocked me so much, just like in the investigative papers, reports that I got. And I would get these reports, and then I would go in to have a meeting with them, and I would ask them questions. And they would absolutely lie. Like one year, my attorney and I went in and to ask about the suicide note. Okay, the night Marty died, David Osborne, the lieutenant, called me to post 16, and he said, Marty Dill killed himself, and he didn't say, all he said was, I'm not going to do 10 to 20. Okay, the next morning I rushed in, everybody kept telling me 10 to 20 is kidnapping, that's not murder. Okay, well, he changes it the next morning. He says, no, he said, I'm not going to do 20 to life. Well, guess what they wrote in the investigative report as being written in the suicide note? It's in the report in black and white in their own words and their own signature that Marty Dill left a suicide note saying, I'm not going to do 20 to life. We go in because to see the suicide note, and all it is, Travis, all it was it says, please forgive me in block letters like a third grader would write in printing. And then in the bottom it says, he signs his name. It's a signature. So the suicide note only said, please forgive me. And then Marty Dill, it's Marvin Ray Dill Jr., he signed it, which that to me is really weird to start with.
Yeah.
That it would be printed. But for the police to continue to take David Osborne's statement saying that this is what he yelled out when he didn't yell that out, and then they put it in their own report that that's what's in the suicide note. That's another thing that's not true. I mean, it's like from day one they've tried to cover up. I don't know, but I've got all this proof, and someday I don't know.
And I know it may be hard to answer, but in your mind, what do you think the real answer is? Do you think that the story that he told was true, that she accidentally was run over, or do you think that she's still out there and she got sold?
Every single day I ask God to let me know. I have some peace in that. I guess the reason I believed that story when I heard it from Mike Shelton was Heather left a little tape, and in this tape she says, I had a dream, and she said in this dream, she said the sun is shining down on a dirt road, and she says I go off it, and she said I knew I wasn't there anymore. Okay, the very night this happened, I had a dream, and I was in this barn, and I remember looking up at somebody, and I pushed some straw or hay or whatever, and there was a burlap bag, and I pulled the burlap bag down, and I saw Heather. Her eyes were still open, and she was looking to the left, and her hair was like muddy or bloody. So when I had that dream that night in 98, when I was told that she was run over, that's, ironically, is what's kind of given me a little peace, is that God let me see that, that is what happened to her. But then again, FBI files say this and that, and I have so many people from that pray, and they say she's alive. They say, Heather's alive. And there's proof that she could have been sold. And of course there's another, she could have known if there was supposed to be a drug bust going down that day, the state police was already there. You knew that, right?
Right.
Okay. So what if she told somebody that she was being watched and that this was supposed to happen? What if she and somebody could have staged the abduction? And then when Marty Dill ended up, what if the thing that broke this whole plan or whatever, if there was a plan, was the farmer filming the Bronco? Otherwise, she would have just disappeared. If he hadn't filmed that Bronco, then Marty Dill wouldn't have ever been a suspect, period. okay, so what if she was a part of her own abduction and she's out there, and because Marty is dead, she and whoever helped her can't let her come home? I mean, that's probably far-fetched, but I really believe there was a plan to take her, and the plan went wrong. And, that's another nagging thing that just keeps, now whether, she was supposed to have been protected by Tim Arthal, and she disappeared on his watch. She was supposed to have gone into a witness program, maybe. And then, of course, I've heard way too many times, what they do to somebody that narcs. So, it's just horrible to think of what could have happened to her and what could be happening still if she was sold. So,
right. Well, I really hope that in doing this also, and with the new developments and the judge really being on your side and understanding that what's went wrong with the police, that you get at the very least get some answers.
Well, Travis, to my knowledge, this is the only podcast that's got the truth. I mean, I know other people mean well, but I don't understand why they just put stuff out there without contacting me. I know it's entertainment, but there's been several, YouTube people that get on there and just, like I said, I appreciate the interest, but I am so thankful that our paths cross where you have done this right, and now you know some of the rest of the story, that there's a lot more, but I think this is going to be, hopefully somebody will hear it and maybe know something, and just tell me where she is,
Right, and if someone does know something, what's the best possible way to contact you or any authorities? Is it a phone number, this phone number, the website, the Facebook page?
I wouldn't suggest they call the authorities at all, but yes, you can put all my information out there. You can put my phone number, 270-836-7643, my emails, the Where is Heather Teague page, STEAG digit 5 at murraystate.edu. Just even my home address, 623 South Main Street, Madisonville, Kentucky, 42431. I mean, people think, if I send her a letter and lick it, then they're going to check the DNA. Believe me, nobody's going to do that. The Kentucky State Police don't do anything. I mean, they won't even admit right now, after 24 years, that Marty was bald. So that's not the way it works. And if somebody would just anonymously, I'm telling you, just put something in the mail, tell me where she is, because someday she's coming home. I mean, someday she's going to be revealed. I know that. That's what Matthew 10:26 says. And I believe that with all my heart. Someday we'll have Heather back.
Well, I really, really appreciate you giving me a call and us talking about this. I'm glad that I reached out, because if I would have posted the information I had, I would have been no different than the other podcast, and the same wrong information would just be spread out there even further. So hopefully this will help, and hopefully you get a little traffic to your phone, to your website, to hopefully get the wheels turning here. And I hope that the judge does the right thing and kind of exposes all that corruption.
It's going to take a miracle, Travis, and I believe God had a hand in this too, for you putting it out there. You're the only one. You're the only one of these people that have said, I'm going to do a podcast tomorrow. And so, I mean, I appreciate that. It was your reaching out to me to give me the respect to let me know you were about to do something that opened the doors for this to happen. And that has to be God. And I appreciate that. And so I believe good will come of this.
And one important thing to note, too, in my original notes for my episode, I wrote a sentence that said that I had never seen a parent so committed to finding answers. Every single social media platform, there's a comment or something that you've said on it. And I think it's ironic that after I wrote that sentence, I reached out to you, and it was less than an hour later you got back with me. So it just affirmed that.
Yes. see, God works that way. I believe that with all my heart, because she deserves so much better than what she had, and she just deserves to come home. And
Right.
it's you have honored her tonight, and that's what it's all about. It's giving God the glory, and letting people know that she's not just that missing girl. Her name is Heather Teague, and all we want is her home. I don't care if anybody goes to jail. I don't care about any of that. And I've told the police this for 24 years. All I want is Heather home.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm sorry that we have to meet this way, but if you ever need anything else at all, or if anything comes to me, like if someone shoots me a message or calls me, I'll direct them to you or let you know. This is my personal number, and
Okay.
as soon as I do post this episode, it's going to take me a little bit to edit, and now I'm going to go back and redo some of the things, obviously, with this new information, and I'll send it to you in a message, and if you want to post it to the page, you can, but I'll just send it directly to you so that way you can listen to it before you do anything with it.
Well, you just get it out there the best way you can, and if you know any other people, to just get it out there, because this is, like I say, the first time that I had actually told my daughter, and even last year, people kept posting stuff, and I was like, I'm gonna have to just do my own podcast, because nobody cares enough to let me know they're fixing to do one. Nobody, it was just disrespectful, and you turned that all around tonight, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and I'll be in touch, and you have a good night, and we'll see what comes of this.
I'll see you someday. Okay, bye, Travis.
Bye-bye. So that was a lot of information in a short period of time. So some facts that are left out of 99% of all articles that she highlighted that you cannot overlook are: Heather met with police the day before she went missing. Police lied about that. The eyewitness that changed his account several times and didn't even call 911. There was a long period of time between his sighting and him calling a non-emergency line. Why would you wait? Why say that you thought it could have been someone playing a joke? With a gun? That doesn't even make sense, just like it doesn't make sense that he changed his story so many times, or that he went with police to search the area. Then the police sending him out of town for his own safety. The sketch wasn't taken until 4 days later. And then the sketch didn't match Marvin Dill at all. He was bald a month before the abduction. No one grows long hair that fast. No gunpowder residue test done at all, or any real proof that he killed himself. The suicide note was elementary at best and wasn't even reported correctly. Why was the FBI already involved only a few days later? Why was the witness at the raid of the house? When has that ever been something that happens? The witness lied about identifying Mr. Dill's body. There were several lies from police, and keeping the calls from the family is incredibly shady. Why make an obviously fake recording to try to hide what the initial call was? An investigator told the mother of an abducted woman to take down missing posters only 2 months later? What asshole cop would do that in any real situation? The police immediately wanted Sarah and everyone to think that it was an open and shut case without answering any questions. They wanted them to believe Mr. Dill did it and killed himself, and that's it. Then, Mr. Dill's brother-in-law admits that Heather was ran over, but the police don't even follow up and allegedly intimidate the person who heard this being said. That's one of the shadiest elements of the entire thing, along with also stopping the questioning of Mr. Dill's wife. Why? Just because she pled the Fifth Amendment one time, they didn't ever question her again? Luckily, the one police officer showed her the real tapes, and 20 years later, that just added more confusion to the entire thing. The FBI didn't even process the Bronco until 10 years later. The FBI encouraged Sarah to sue the state police, and that says a lot in itself. She had to declare her daughter dead just to obtain the correct documentation. The documents that the FBI produced implied that there were drugs and prostitution involved, which the police had never mentioned at all during any point of the initial investigation. All the documents that would lead anyone in the right direction have been so heavily redacted that you can't read or understand them. All the names have been removed. The FBI says the documents that they sent the state police were not redacted, meaning that the state police are the ones that edited the documents, which means they have the names but don't want anyone else to know or see them. Police officers that helped were put on either different duties or retired. It seemed like every officer minus a very small group lied at almost every turn in this case. I don't normally assume corruption from police or cover-ups, but knowing what I know now, it seems that at the very least the Kentucky State Police have some secrets that they don't want coming out. Whether it's corruption, a cover-up, or an even deeper situation with drugs and sex trafficking, they do not want the real truth to come out. The eyewitness is a very critical element to this entire situation. Like Sarah said, he has several attorneys and is refusing to show up and help anymore. Who does that? Regardless of who did what, Sarah deserves answers. If she was accidentally killed while trying to escape, she needs to be brought back home to give her mother some closure. If she was sold into some form of sex trafficking or prostitution ring, the FBI should get back into looking for her. If she was put into some form of witness protection program, at the very least, they should at least let her mother know so that she's alright and she can get some sleep. Luckily, Sarah is gaining traction with a few judges and has actually won a settlement recently due to the entire 911 call fiasco. She's currently trying to get the eyewitness back under the microscope. The more attention that this episode gets and her call gets, the more likely she is to get some answers. If you have any information, like Sarah said, please contact her via her cell phone, which is 270-836-7643. You can also send her an email at steague5@murraystate.edu or anonymously mail her at 623 South Main Street, Madisonville, Kentucky, zip code 42431. Another point of contact is her Facebook page called Where is Heather Danielle Teague, or her website findheatherteague.com. Any piece of information, no matter how big or small, will help. What do you think? Let me know in the comments of the post or by messaging me directly. Please remember to subscribe, follow, or like the TM podcast on whatever you're listening to, and leave me a review as well. If you want to become a patron and help support this show, head on over to patreon.com/thetmpodcast and donate. Any little bit helps. Don't forget I have a new tier that allows for you to select content that I provide. This episode was actually chosen by Ethan, a new patron that has been a supporter since day one. Another patron in this new tier is Adam, and he has selected a great topic for next week's episode that I'm excited to get into. A bit of bonus information that I'll give to this tier this week is I'll post the entire unedited call from Sarah just for that tier on Patreon. I didn't edit out much besides a couple of ums and questions I asked, but it's good to have that raw file if you want to look at that first before listening to the episode. As always, the TM podcast is researched, written, and recorded by myself, and the intro and outro track was written by the artist Stress.